Lagi maca kurangi ya. Kakak simpas wingi be.
I'll start now. I'll use bilingual. I will use English and Indonesia. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Shalom, salam sejahtera bagi kita semua, dan salam kebajikan. Good morning to all webinars participants who already joined us today. I am Mary Sally, who will be the moderator for today's webinar. Allow me to represent the ECOTON's team to greet all participants today. Hello ECOTONers, apa kabar Sumaimu hari ini? I am so glad to see you guys today in this Zoom meeting, although we cannot meet each other face to face, but I hope today's meeting will give all participants new insights and knowledge. Okay, so today, 11th of February, we meet again at ECOTON's webinar session titled Philanthropy Culture in Australia and Indonesia with Juan as our source speaker and the role of ECOTON in Brantas River with Marnie as our source speaker. And allow me to greet our speaker today. Hi Juan, hi Marnie. I hope you guys are doing well today, even though a little bit nervous, but I think you will do fine. Okay, so Juan and Marnie are interns from ICCS program, and they got the chance to do their internship in ECOTON. And we, ECOTON teams, already assigned Juan and Marnie with 2 different topics for their research. As I said before, Juan was focused on the philanthropy culture in Australia and Indonesia, and Marnie was focused on the role of ECOTON in Brantas River. And today we will listen to Juan and Marnie as they share the result of their research on each topic we gave them. But before we start the webinar, I have some rules for the participants today, which are the first one. The ID of the participants of the webinar follows the following format, which is institute/organization_name. The second one, participants must behave politely during the webinar. Participants are required to turn on the camera and turn off their microphone during the webinar. And for the participants who want to ask questions, they can use the raise hand feature or the chat box, I will then guide as a moderator. Dan untuk teman-teman yang mau bertanya dalam bahasa Indonesia, boleh ditanyakan saja, nanti akan saya bantu untuk translate. Then all participants must fill in the attendance link that will be given in the chat box. And that is all for the rules. Also, if I may ask for all participants to turn on their camera so that we can take pictures together. Mas Tonis, can you help me to take the picture? Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay, thank you guys. And now without further ado, let's start our webinar today. And Marnie, the stage is all yours.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Marissa. Just give me a second. I'll get my PowerPoint slides up for everyone to see. I've got some slides with some notes and pictures and things to help me get through today. So let's see. There we go. Hopefully everybody can see that. Or if you can't, hopefully the slides will be up in a minute if you can't see them yet. All right, so Selamat Pagi. Hello, everybody. My name is Marnie, and I'm an environmental science student at a university based in Melbourne, Australia, which is where I'm currently living and currently zooming in from today. I've been, as Marissa said, I've been completing an internship with ECOTON for the last 5 weeks. And as part of my internship, I have been researching the Brantas River and the role of ECOTON in improving the quality of the Brantas River. So what I'll be talking to you about today is some of the findings that I found, and it will be a brief summary, I suppose, of a written report or a written article that I have already provided to ECOTON. So you guys get the very condensed version today. Awesome. Sorry, I was just checking the chat messages. I noticed there was a couple of chat messages and I thought there might have been something wrong, but everything looks good. So to get started formally, for those of you who don't know, the Brantas River is a freshwater river that's based in East Java in Indonesia. The river is about 320 kilometers long, making it the second longest river in Java. The river supports food production. It produces electricity. It provides raw water for industry to use. It supports tourism and mining, and it encourages biodiversity for birds, insects, and other animals. The river is used for domestic purposes. It's used for recreational activities, for breeding fish and fishing, and it's also used for crop irrigation. All of these activities lead to pollution in the Brantas River, and that's where ECOTON come into things. It is thought that a lack of knowledge about the environment leads to residents in the Brantas River catchment not taking part in activities to protect the Brantas River. Not only does this impact local biota, but it does also impact human health, and that's where ECOTON comes in to be involved. ECOTON are a river restoration company and a research institute based in East Java. Among their many projects, ECOTON is working to reduce the amount of pollution in the Brantas River. Through their activities and their actions, ECOTON aim to change the community behaviours and government awareness and knowledge of the river environment. And they also hope to change the impact of human activities on the Brantas River. The work of ECOTON's staff and volunteers falls into three main categories, and those categories are participatory research, education, and advocacy. ECOTON's programs include the Biotilic program, the Diaper Evacuation Brigade, activism programs and exhibitions, as well to raise awareness of the issues surrounding river pollution on the Brantas River. Any research that is conducted by ECOTON is published through print and electronic media to increase community awareness of the environmental issues surrounding the river. Any government action is typically intended to encourage changes in the environmental conditions, and it leads to the development of government policies to decrease the amount of pollution in the Brantas River, or rivers generally. So as part of my research, I was provided with the results of a survey that ECOTON conducted in January 2022, so just a few weeks ago now. The survey was conducted to find out what respondents knew about ECOTON and ECOTON's work, as well as their understanding of the issues on and the benefits of the Brantas River. 33 people participated in the survey. 14 participants were male, 19 were female. Most lived in East Java, and most were aged between 12 and 45. When asked what ECOTON is, there was a general knowledge of ECOTON's environmental work around river conservation, combating river pollution, and research. When you look at the word cloud on the screen, you will see the most common responses given by survey respondents printed in larger font. So you can see that words like environmental, environment, conservation, river, research, and pollution stand out more than the other words. The respondents of the survey did also have some knowledge of ECOTON's current programs. So those programs that stood out the most were the campaigns about single-use plastics, microplastics research, and the tree operations and plastic waste cleanups. And those three programs are the three biggest columns that you see on the column graph. So clearly respondents are familiar with ECOTON and ECOTON's work around microplastics. And that's a positive thing to note because it's showing that people are aware of the positive actions and positive work that ECOTON are doing around microplastics. There are several strategies that I have recommended for ECOTON to explore in 2022. And these recommendations formed a fairly large chunk of the report that I gave to ECOTON. So things like encouraging individuals to take their own steps to reduce microplastics could help ECOTON in their efforts to reduce microplastics in the Brantas River. And I think that's important because respondents in the survey suggested that they were willing to reduce single-use plastic item use, not throw their personal trash into waterways, and to become involved in environmental cleaning and conservation activities. Providing information that outlines activities that outlines alternatives, I should say, to single-use plastics, and to inform of alternative ways to dispose of waste will provide ways for community members to follow through on their actions or the actions that they would like to partake in. Survey respondents indicated that they have participated in environmental socialization and education with ECOTON. They've done environmental campaign work or action work with ECOTON, and they've also done environmental research or apprenticeships with ECOTON in the past as well. So given that these are the most accessed of ECOTON's programs, I've suggested that ECOTON continues to develop and utilize these programs into the future. As ECOTON believe in educating children about the injustice that exists in river management so that they can make responsible decisions to protect the river, continuing to educate elementary school age children is important for ECOTON to continue with. There is potential for children's thoughts and actions to have a flow-on effect to siblings, parents, and other family members who may adopt more environmentally friendly behaviours as well. Volunteering is another thing that ECOTON can continue to engage with. Volunteering can be a great way to improve life satisfaction by improving personal health and happiness. It can increase a sense of belonging, and it does allow for friendships to be made as well. So engaging individuals through volunteering can provide a connection between personal health and the health of the planet as well, which could be used as a tool for ECOTON to encourage more people to care about the environment. Respondents in ECOTON's survey from January have suggested that conservation research monitoring the river condition and quality and campaigning for action will be beneficial for ECOTON to continue pursuing in the future. So maintaining these activities and involving volunteers or other people in these activities can help to spread ECOTON's message and improve the condition of the Brantas River as well. So if ECOTON is considering utilising internationally based volunteers, collaborating with international organisations to link volunteers up with their business could help ECOTON to manage this process more efficiently or more effectively perhaps than they may be able to do on their own, because obviously managing international workers could be quite complex. And additionally, reaching out to internationally based environmental organisations to see how they run their daily cleanup efforts and other work might provide ECOTON with ideas about ways to enhance their own processes into the future as well. Educating the community is important to help the public to realise their impact on the environment, in turn leading to responsibility for actions and a desire to protect the environment. These programs can raise awareness of environmental care and the need to preserve a clean environment for personal health and for future generations as well, while providing a connection between the environment and personal outcomes that affect individuals and their loved ones. When communicating with local communities, it is important to note, though, that 18% of Indonesians do not believe that human activity impacts climate change, 6% believe that climate is not actually changing, and a further 21% of Indonesians have stated that they do not know enough about climate change to have an opinion on it. So given these statistics, ECOTON should be aware that these beliefs may hamper their ability to encourage change in some members of the community, and informing communities about the history of climate change, as well as current and future impacts of climate change on individuals and on the community might be helpful for ECOTON to deal with this portion of the population. Working with local community groups or businesses to find alternative ways to utilise, reuse and recycle plastics can help to reduce the amount of plastic waste in the Brantas River. Depending on who ECOTON is able to set up collaborations with in the future, depending on the technologies and the methodologies that these people have access to, or these organisations have access to, plastic waste potentially could be transformed into items like sustainable clothing, ocean-friendly dog collars, sustainable shopping bags, or even things like fuel for motorbikes. So potentially looking at these alternative uses for plastics could go a long way to helping ECOTON to protect the Brantas River against microplastics and pollution. ECOTON currently have strategic partnerships in place with a number of organisations like Aliansi Zero Waste Indonesia and the Break Free from Plastic movement. It is suggested that ECOTON places a greater emphasis ECOTON should place a greater emphasis on these relationships to increase awareness of their work, thus increasing their audience and attracting more people to their cleaning and conservation activities. Further, establishing new collaborations with other community groups to create riverbank parks for communities to be responsible and accountable for is ideal for involving people in protecting the Brantas River too. There is scope with this type of work and having people involved in protecting a patch of land, to have things like annual awards or even, awards twice a year, that type of thing, that acknowledge the cleanest park in the region or the most improved park in the region, that type of thing, as a way to encourage people to keep the local area clean and protect the Brantas River at the same time. These types of activities, these types of awards could continue on until the river quality is improved and human behaviours are changed. So such drastic cleanup measures and the like don't need to be continued into the future. Okay, well, sorry, I'm getting a little bit lost in my slides here. I apologise for that. Let me jump back to here. So almost 90% of Indonesians consider it important to buy locally made products rather than importing goods, with more than 90% of Indonesians considering it important to buy ethical or eco-friendly products. Therefore, it may be possible for ECOTON to work with local businesses to find ways to support goods distribution while minimising waste reduction. Similarly, partnering with local businesses to help them to plan for, budget and manage environmentally based programs within their business can help to break some of the issues with using materials, or particularly in using plastic before it actually becomes a waste. Okay, so given the poor government interest in controlling the pollution in the Brantas River or even improving the pollution in the Brantas River, working with governing bodies, I'm getting tongue-tied here. So working with governing bodies like PPLHD or DLH to encourage industries to comply with existing environmental measures and to provide ways to make this easier should have some impact on the quality of the Brantas River's environment, and helping organisations to alter their manufacturing methods can also help to decrease waste generation. And finally, respondents in ECOTON's recent survey were keen to support ECOTON's effort to rally the government to ratify microplastics legislation. So this should encourage ECOTON to continue their work to persuade the government to act on river conservation and microplastic abolishment. High quality, relevant and readable research, building accessible relationships with policymakers, understanding how the policymaking process works and being adaptable with any communication should help to engage with the government and hopefully influence change. So in conclusion, it is obvious that there is some awareness of environmental conservation in East Java, with some interest in protecting the environment existing among members of the community. However, there is still work to be done to improve awareness of ECOTON's current work and ultimately to reduce microplastic pollution in the Brantas River. It is hoped that the suggestions provided to ECOTON can be applied to different parts of the river, where application of the suggestion will actually make a difference to that community. And it is hoped that ECOTON can implement some or all of my suggestions in an appropriate time frame to make a long-lasting impact on the Brantas River and the communities along the river. So terima kasih, thank you for your time today. I have also included a couple of details here about my references as well, in case you would like to know. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marissa, for giving me the time to speak.
Okay, wow, that was so enlightening, Marnie. That was so detailed and so thorough. Thank you so much for taking the research so seriously. And I also have a brief summary from what Marnie just said, that Brantas River is a river in East Java and is the second longest river in Java. And it used for domestic purpose like irrigation and recreation, and those activities are causing pollution. And ECOTON takes part to restore the Brantas River. And what ECOTON did was a lot actually. And basically they're just like education and research and advocacy through the government And Marnie and ECOTON's team in this research did a survey about how far they know about ECOTON. And as Marnie showed us, that people may have known ECOTON as environmental organization and pollution reducer and river guard. And Marnie also give ECOTON a recommendation, which are some of them, like individuals reducing microplastic by reducing single plastic use. And ECOTON can provide information and alternatives to plastic use for the community, and engage with individuals through the volunteering activities, and collaborating with international organizations also could help ECOTONs in further programs. There are actually a lot of things that ECOTON had done for the Brantas River, but as Marnie said, we still have so much homeworks to do. And hopefully by this research that Marnie did with ECOTON's team will help ECOTON in further projects. Yeah, thank you so much, Marnie, for the presentation and explanation. Okay. We will continue to our to Juan's presentation. And Juan? Okay. While Juan prepares his presentation, I would like to inform everyone in this Zoom meeting that ECOTON and Juan still have our project going in GoFundMe. So those who are interested to take a part in our project can kindly visit the link that Mas Tonis will send in the chat box. Okay, Juan, you can start.
Selamat siang, everyone. So my name is Juan, and I'm presenting today on environmental philanthropy and institutional influences. So today I'll be talking about the sociological theory of environmental philanthropy, the research outcomes of my survey, and the comparisons of Australian and Indonesian environmental philanthropy. So in 2001 to 2021, Charities Aid Foundation published their first annual World Giving Index, the first one they've had since 2018 following the COVID pandemic. And the report focuses on philanthropic attitudes of the global public and assesses factors like time volunteered, as you can see here, time volunteered, money donated, and strangers helped. Despite the damaging effects of the pandemic on global economies, the foundation found that Indonesia was actually one of the most generous countries in 2020. So more than 8 out of 10 Indonesians donated money throughout 2020. So during the hardship brought on by the pandemic, Indonesia's principles of Pancasila seemed to resound within the communities and exemplified by their philanthropic values. The need for solidarity and social welfare during a period of high precarity echoed around the world, particularly by countries whose development has been hindered, such as Indonesia. So the resulting support of communities for each other through philanthropy has been highlighted by the pandemic, but Indonesia has had a great long run before it. Indonesia was acknowledged by the Charities Aid Foundation as one of the only countries to consistently increase its World Giving Index in the last decade. So with NGOs as one of the key stakeholders in the development of Indonesia, funding income through public philanthropy allows the provision of services that would otherwise be the responsibility of the government. Due to the intertwined nature of development and economy, economic philanthropy would then play a significant role in assisting the government's development goals. So according to Core Indonesia, institutionalized philanthropy is still very new in Indonesia. So with very little focus given to the private sector and instead of the public individuals. This reflects the culture of philanthropy embedded within Indonesia as a majorly Muslim country. The Islamic tradition of zakat has successfully fostered a culture of generosity and philanthropy within Indonesia. However, the distribution of philanthropic contributions towards different sectors in Indonesia has been found to be unequal. So in a survey conducted by ECOTON, we found that most donors primarily prefer to donate towards humanitarian causes and religious donation, with environmental causes coming in third. Regardless of the increasing awareness of climate change and Indonesia's high vulnerability to it, environmental philanthropy seemed to be on the lower end of the agenda for the general public. This can be seen by the challenges faced by ECOTON in the lack of crowdfunding on the platform Kita Bisa, despite proactive strategies that they've taken in creating public awareness. This then forms the question of my essay. So, what shapes the society's philanthropic values and attitudes? And how do social institutions play a part in the creation of philanthropic habits? And how can they help shift the attention towards environmental issues? So my argument is that because social institutions affect the formation of knowledge and how we see reality and the values surrounding social aspects, they affect social philanthropic preferences and our capability to donate. The social institutions of religion, education, economy, and family, especially government, all contribute to the philanthropic values held by the public. The theoretical foundation for my research is social constructivism. It's based on the concept of symbolic interactionism by sociologist George Herbert Mead. And it suggests that humans interact with the world based on social meanings ascribed to it. And the ascribed meanings are created from our interactions with other people and society at large. The value of meanings of an object is then interpreted by a person depending on specific life circumstances and how they've been exposed to it and how their society reacts to it. Our world, our environment, and our lives and attitudes toward the environment are socially constructed systems of symbols and meanings. That's why the importance and great influence of social institutions over our actions and our capabilities in carrying them out. A mechanism of social order structured around meeting an aspect of social need. Social institutions of religion, education, family, economy, and the government act as pillars that uphold and guide the formation of social identity. Identity in this case, as the values and habits of a public collective, can be described by the sociological concept of habitus. According to sociologist Pierre Bourdieu, habitus is a subjective but not individual system of internalized structures, ways of perception and conception, and action common to all members of the same group or class. Simply put, it is a collective identity that is formed through and continues dominant social cultural conditions. It is through this collective system of internalized ideals and perceptions of the world that values and preferences are formed. In regards to philanthropy, as evident through the strong influence of religion in Indonesia's generous culture, social institutions cultivate how we donate and how we prefer to certain causes. It is through their ingrained social influence that social institutions teach individuals and societies towards philanthropy. So what does that say about the culture of environmentalism in Indonesia? Does that mean that Indonesia's social institutions aren't pro-environmentalist? With religious faith playing a significant role in Indonesian culture, young environmentalists have been documented rallying together through Islamic knowledge, identifying themselves as caliphs, or God's protectors of the natural world. A study conducted on the development of environmentalist attitudes within Indonesian education also showed that students are taught discipline, responsibility, and cooperation in taking care of the environment. These examples show that Indonesia's religious and educational institutions work together to foster environmental philanthropy within the country. Assessing the process of becoming an environmentalist in Indonesia, Nilan and Wibawanto point out that despite Indonesian culture not having a strong environmentalist foundation, the growth of environmentalist groups have become a resistive reaction to dominant attitudes. Environmentalism is reported to have grown from individuals growing connections, assembling in resistance to negatively perceived environments, and mobilizing together towards positive change, much like ECOTON. So this can be seen as a way of going against outdated values of social institutions. Environmental activists also have also been active since 1980s, 1990s. So we see a long history of it in Indonesia. So not only does this prove that pro-environmentalist attitudes are growing in Indonesia, but it also implies that the social institution of the government is what is challenging public philanthropic activity. The Center of Asian Philanthropy and Society have found that Indonesia, alongside Myanmar, are among the worst countries in Southeast Asian countries at facilitating philanthropy. The government as a social institution and political body that regulates social and political actions influence the public values through legislation and active policies. The foundation critiques the Indonesian government's lack of good policies or tax benefits that greatly reduce the capacity of the Indonesian public for environmental philanthropy. To further understand this government influence over philanthropic attitudes, the essay explores differences between Australian and Indonesian environmental philanthropy and how the government as a social institution affects it. The measured philanthropic attitudes of both countries will be compared and assessed in relation to their institutional encouragement. So this is the survey that I conducted. So it was done through a Google Forms survey with data collected from Australian donors of the ECOTON crowdfunding platform in Australia, the GoFundMe platform. And as we can see, environmentalism is also a powerful cause in Australia. However, there is great differences in philanthropic contributions. So while having strong environmental attitudes, We can see similarities between Australia and Indonesia. So younger generations are more likely to support wildlife conservation as opposed to environmental conservation. This is due to Australia having a unique ecosystem and wildlife that is taught widely in schools. But you can see the difference in age groups. So younger generations tend to donate towards environmental causes, whereas older tend to go towards medical research. Similar to Indonesia, environmentalism is strong in Australia. However, philanthropic efforts are more towards wildlife conservation, because environmental protection is seen as a government domain. This is true because Australian government have very robust land protection policies. So according to an Australian government report on the encouragement of environmental philanthropy, factors such as institutional aspects, values and belief systems, attitudes, social barriers, social norms, financial incentives, and incentives to socially and publicly motivate people to engage in donations, and the adequacy of institutions to help with this process all affect how the public can contribute. So this report from 2017 has allowed the government to implement policies that led to the creation of a broader and more integrated philanthropic environment. So essentially, the report has helped the government create policies helping towards tax deductions for donations. And since land conservation is the main focus for Australian philanthropy, they have also created programs for people who want to donate land and maintain public land as national parks. The Australian government's employment of those strategies allowed for public and private partnership, supported by government policies to increase encouragement in the public. As I mentioned before, this type of institutional encouragement is a pillar of social constructivism that fosters cultural environmental philanthropy. So the government acts as a legitimizing political body, not just in leading by example, but also in supporting the public to make those contributions. We can see this institutional influence through Indonesia's religion-based contributions compared to Australia, with majority of contributions going towards humanitarian causes and religion-based donations. So we can see also the difference between Australia and Indonesia, with wildlife conservation not being the opposite of Australia. So wildlife conservation is on the top of the list for Australia. So in an interview with Mbak Heti Nurchayarini of Philanthropy Indonesia, environmental donations are stated to be hindered by differences in rural and urban perceptions. So urban populations are disconnected from seeing the environmental damage and long-term effects of environmental damage. She also said that a majority of the general public, much like Australia, see environmental issues as governmental responsibilities, and therefore to donate to other causes and volunteer instead to support. This is why crowdfunding donations are usually funneled towards individual support, because people prefer to see the immediate impacts of their support rather than take long term. And we can understand that it's hard to engage with environmental causes if the government aren't implementing changes that people can see immediately. So people are turned away. A study conducted by the Al-Iqtishad Journal for Islamic Economics, evaluating the tax policy on philanthropic activities in Indonesia, found that the lack of dynamics in current tax policy is not in harmony with the rapid development of increasing varied philanthropic activities. So because Indonesia is a rapidly growing economy and there's a lot more NGOs being created, the tax policies of the Indonesian government aren't in line with supporting that many NGOs. So therefore, the donors and recipients face uncertainty related to taxation. So as I mentioned before, the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society states that tax policies not only hinder the public, but also NGOs, since they're taxed as well. So donations can be seen as twice as unattractive for the public. So the importance of government encouragement in cultivating environmental philanthropy is highlighted by how it interacts with social attitudes. So in conclusion, the social institution of the government needs to improve active policies in its public commitment to environmental issues to encourage the socialization and teaching of public action. Religious, educational, and family teachings have created strong environmental values in Indonesia over the years, but further government facilitation through tax policies and NGO support can increase environmental philanthropic contributions. Philanthropy Indonesia's Executive Director, Pak Hamid Abidi, advised on several ways the government can cause support and provide partnerships. So provide conducive policy climate. So facilities, rewards, tax incentives, donor education. So educating the public and philanthropic organizations on how to become contributors, organizing strategies, and ensuring that donating can become sustainable in Indonesia. Assistance in data collection and research development, particularly in research that allows NGOs to get more donors, as well as the integration of goals. So synchronizing development and program sustainabilities through policy. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, that was so interesting, Juan. I didn't know that you did so much research as that you just showed. And I will maybe give the participants a brief summary from what you just said. You actually showed us that there's an index in 2021, and despite the pandemic, Indonesia was acknowledged as one of the country that consistently giving and titled as the most generous country in 2021. And Indonesia as Islamic country dominated the philanthropy culture in religion area, and regardless the climate change in environmental in Indonesia, environmental philanthropy seems like the less agenda in Indonesia. And you also told us that what shapes philanthropy habits and values in society, and you explained that humans interact with the world by social meaning, which is so interesting. I just knew that. And also you told us that there are some factors that affect public to contribute or donate, especially in Australia, and you basing that on the reports in 2017 which helped the Australian government to make policies like tax reduction for donation. And you also explained that you did an interview with Mbak Hetty from Philanthropy Indonesia, and she told you that people rather see the instant effect of the donation rather than the long-term effects. That's why Indonesian philanthropy culture is really in a gray area right now. And as your conclusion, you said that the social institution of the government can improve the active policies and its public commitment to environmental issues to encourage the socialization of public action. It's so interesting from what you just stated. And I think that is from Juan and Marnie, and I want to open the question and answer session. I think anyone can ask in Indonesia or English. For those who want to ask, you can raise your hand or just put the question in the chat box. And while everyone is preparing their question, I would like to inform once again that ECOTON team and Juan still have our project going in GoFundMe. So those who are interested to take a part in our project can visit the link that Mas Tonis already sent in the chat box. Okay, before the question arises to Marnie and Juan, maybe I will ask Marnie and Juan about their experience in ECOTON. How are you guys feeling after like 5 weeks of internship? Are there anything interesting or something that you experience that you never experienced before?
For me, it was very interesting to learn about ECOTON's programs in community development and how in-depth you guys work with the program. So you're helping create infrastructure by putting in the bins. You're helping rally community research. So it was very interesting how that happens on the ground. And yeah, as someone who has, when I started, I didn't really have that much cultural knowledge of Indonesia. So thank you so much for the experience of learning from ECOTON.
Okay, that was so great. And what about Marnie? Did you have anything interesting you can share with us?
I guess what I have to say is very similar to what Juan has just said, that I found it very interesting working with ECOTON and finding out more about what you do and the programs that you do and what you're trying to do to protect the Brantas River and other rivers around the East Java area. And I suppose for me, the biggest thing, aside from learning about ECOTON and learning about the local environment where you guys live, is just seeing the differences between I guess sort of the Indonesian culture and the Australian culture. I have visited in Indonesia previously, but it was only for 1 week. And I thought, I know a little bit about Indonesian culture because I visited Indonesia before. I don't know a lot, but I know a little bit. But I think I've learned so much just sort of being part of this program, and it's been a really interesting, really eye-opening program to be a part of, just with what I've learned, and specifically what I've learned from you, Marissa, and then Risky and the other staff I've worked with from ECOTON. So yeah, so thank you again, like Juan said as well. Thank you for for having me on the program as well. It has been very, very interesting for me to be a part of.
Wow, yeah, we're so great to have you guys as the part of our internship program as well. And I think there's a question in the chat box, and I will help to read it. It's actually from Rizky, and Rizky asked that from the explanation from the both of you, I see the connection between why people in Indonesia is lacking with awareness to environmental issue. So there are still many damage to our environment, and why people in Indonesia is still not having desire to spending their money in environmental issue. Can you two give us explanation the relations between them and what you suggest to raise their will to donate in environmental issue?
So I'm not so sure, Risky, that I can speak in regards to encouraging the donations more, but I know when I was speaking earlier that I gave a couple of statistics about Indonesians, not believing that humans were impacting climate change. People didn't really know a lot about climate change and that type of thing. And I guess sort of following on from that, if people don't have awareness of that type of issue, they might not see that there's any sort of harm, I suppose, throwing waste into the river and consuming and discarding of so much microplastic or plastic waste and things like that. So the only thing I suppose I could encourage, which may help, would be just to get out there and educate people and provide workshops and go into schools and work with businesses and things like that, kind of like what I've suggested in my presentation, just to raise the awareness of microplastics, raise the awareness of environmental issues. And hopefully, like I've said, hopefully that will help to lead to change in regards to people's behaviours in regards to the environment, and perhaps it might have an impact on donations as well. Is there anything that you can add to that one?
Oh, I think that will be Juan's part.
Yeah.
I think awareness is definitely a big part of the donations. So because people don't believe in it, I guess they believe that it's the government's responsibility to fix it, which is very true. But without government action, people aren't, I guess more people will believe it if the government acts and legitimizes it.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there are certain policies, I know, like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that there has been criticism of especially environmental policies that are considered talk but no action. Would you say that that's true? So if there was action, even if it's just for the sake of public knowledge or for the sake of showing the public that it's important, even if the government doesn't contribute, if they lead by example, then the public would follow.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree, because in Indonesia we actually have the single plastic use policy, but it's not taken seriously by the government. So the plastic is still everywhere.
Yeah. And I guess it's it's also an attitude that, like, it's an attitude problem in the sense that, like, how the public view natural resources. So in Australia, different states have different days. So there's public cleanup. It's like a national cleanup day where people are encouraged to clean their local beaches. But since it's a national event, then, like, it's taught in schools, it's a program in schools supported by the government. So it's government supported teaching. So, yeah.
Okay, so it's like a national event in Australia to clean up the beach.
Yeah,
Oh.
so it's like a government. Yeah,
Okay.
it's government supported events, and events like that. Does Indonesia do? I don't know, like Earth Day.
Oh yeah, actually we do have an Earth
Yeah.
Day and we celebrated it, but
Like everyone
only
turns the
like
lights off.
NGOs. No, only NGOs like us did clean up and stuff, not the government, I think. And we also have another question from Pemuda Biasa, or we can translate it into English as ordinary guy. And he said it explained that there were not interested donors for the environment. And he asked how to make this environmental issue more attractive to donors. Maybe Jun can answer that.
So firstly, I think when I said that it's hard for people to see the immediate impact if they don't know much or they're not very aware of environmental issues. NGOs can advertise the immediate, like with the crowdfunding that I was trying to do, I wanted to show people what their donation goes to. So like I asked for the budget. So I wanted to show if you tell people, oh, your $10 can help towards a microscope, or your $10 can help towards, we'll buy us containers for water samples, and people can see the immediate impacts of what they've given. But also something as simple as government approved advertisements would really teach people to, oh, this is important. Do you guys have a lot of government advertisements?
Well, I think when the NGOs like us push the government to advertise the program, they will consider it, not like saying yes to it immediately. They will consider it because, in Indonesia, the environmental issue is not that big of the agenda. So yeah, the government is not too much aware, I think. And we have one more question from the chat box from Darurini. The question for Juan and Marnie: in Indonesia, crowdfunding for environmental campaign or waste management still has low supporters, unlike donation for social and religious charity. What is good strategy to encourage more supporters for ECOTON, and what kind of offline events usually done to collect donation in Australia or other countries? Maybe Marnie can start.
I'm just sort of thinking about, I guess, sort of how I become aware of, particular organizations, particular charities, people that are looking for donations. When I go to work, so when I'm not on internship and I'm actually doing my day-to-day job, I spend a lot of time in Melbourne City, so in the main part where all the businesses are. And it's very common to see two different things. One being that people stand on the street corner with like these plastic shaker containers, and they'll rattle them and they'll make a noise, and they're full of coins. Yeah. And they're standing there to collect donations for whatever charity or whatever thing that they're trying to raise money for. And just sort of seeing them standing there and shaking, this noisy container, to attract attention, it can often get myself or other people as well interested. Who are these people? What are they doing? What are they raising money for? And it can be a very easy way, I suppose, for them to get more people to know about who they are and what they're doing, what they are trying to raise money for. And then the other thing that I see is similar, a little bit different, but similar, that I'll often just see people standing on the corner and they'll wear their T-shirts to identify themselves, and they'll often be holding a clipboard, with some information on it. And they will just walk up to people and they'll go, "Hi, my name is, and I am from, and today I am." And they'll just start a conversation with people to tell them more about, I guess, sort of the organization. And that can be done in the city. I've seen that actually both of those activities. Actually, I've seen both of those activities done at like sporting events, it shows, places like that as well. So anywhere where there will be a lot of people gathering or a lot of people moving through a space, that both of those types of activities will happen. And like I said, for both of those things, I can see for me that they're both really easy ways, I guess, for people to grab my attention and tell me more about who they are, what they're doing, and what they're trying to achieve. Maybe something like that potentially could help.
Okay, is that legal in Australia, just to shake noisy stuff in the middle at the end of the road?
I believe they need to register with, I'm not sure exactly the process. I don't know if Juan knows any more than I do, but I think they've got to register with local councils or that type of thing to be able to do it. So there are official channels they need to go through, but if they follow the channels, like they're certainly allowed to do it.
Oh, okay. Maybe John wants to add something.
Indonesia has people like that who with clipboards, yes? Yeah, and they like try to sign you up.
Yeah, but not many of us, yeah.
Yeah, because I think I mentioned to you and Mastonis before, that was my job before. So I don't know if you've had any door knockers before, Mani?
Yeah, I have actually. Not for a little while, but I have, yeah.
Yeah. So in Australia, charities can choose to advertise another way. So instead of billboards or TV advertisements, they go through something called like face-to-face marketing. So they hire people who represent the charities, and they hire so they're like human flyers. So like they provide information to people, and they also get the donation. So they speak to people one-on-one, face-to-face, and they get to know the people, and they try to convince people individually to donate. I used to work that, not in public, but like we used to knock house by house. And it's a very big industry in Australia. I was very surprised. I didn't think it would be, but it's a big industry in Australia. So that could be an avenue worth looking into. But also, I think another way to make donations more personal for people is if there's a transaction. So in Australia, a lot of charities run raffles. So people donate and other companies donate a prize. And people donate for a ticket. Well, no, it's not really donating, but they buy a ticket. And then that's how charities fundraise. And that's what the face-to-face marketers actually sell. But I think I was speaking to Marissa before about the possibility of selling items made from recycled plastic as a way to fundraise.
Yeah, you did. Actually, we were thinking about that as our fundraising strategy too. Okay, I think Yesi here raised her hand. Maybe she wants to ask a question. Buat Mbak Yesi, boleh?
Oke Mbak, mau tanya dong. Siapa target filantropi kalian di Australia? Sama satu pertanyaan lagi dong Mbak.
Iya boleh.
Apa tantangan kalian dalam melakukan kegiatan filantropi di Australia?
Oke, itu aja.
Ya, udah itu aja.
Oke, makasih Mbak Yesi. So Yesi was asking, who is the target of philanthropy in Australia, and what are the challenges for the philanthropy activities in Australia?
So because Australia philanthropic contributions are more focused on exchange, like I said before, it's a big industry on selling tickets to raffles, and that's how charities fundraise. They tend to focus on people. So environmental causes are targeted towards younger people. Medical causes are more targeted to older people. It depends on the demographic. But because the Australian government allows tax deductions, so you make a donation, you keep the receipt, and then you can have it taken off your tax for the year. So because there's that avenue, there's no single target, everyone is allowed to contribute.
Okay, maybe Marnie can add something to what this Julian said.
I'm actually not so sure for that one, Marissa. I'm not really sure that I've got any extra information that I can provide for that one. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay. Maybe Mbak Rara mau bertanya. She raised her hand. Boleh di-unmute, Mbak?
Mbak, mau tanya dong.
Kalau bergema boleh ditaruh di chat box aja, Mbak.
Saya taruh di chat box aja, Mbak.
Oh ya, okay. So actually, if you donate in Australia, like you get a tax reduction, so it's actually it can benefit you from donating, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I meant before by like the government encourages people to give.
That's interesting. So the government actually support the donating program and activities in Australia.
Definitely.
Okay. Oke, makasih Mbak Rara untuk pertanyaannya. So, Rara asking you guys that can you measure philanthropic activities in Australia and Indonesia? Who has the most activities? Maybe Juan can answer.
Yeah. So who's most active? And well, the interesting thing is that with the World Giving Index, it's measuring, it's measuring generosity in general. So time volunteered, strangers helped, and money donated. But it doesn't necessarily go towards long-term change, if that makes sense. So Indonesians tend to be more generous, but the ways that they can help doesn't affect long-term institutional change. So the problem is still there, but it's not, it won't, like the situation doesn't change. So Indonesia's definitely, so I think it's the last 5 years, Indonesia has been 1 and Australia has been number 2 for generosity.
Okay, that's interesting. So Indonesia actually the first generous country. If we compare it to Australia, Indonesia is more generous.
Yeah.
So if we see the data generally, you can say that Indonesia has more more philanthropic activities than Australia.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in terms of supporting NGOs, because only the NGOs activities can make better change, so the situation changes, but they don't donate to NGOs that much. So the philanthropic activities can mean helping a poor, like helping a beggar, helping the church, or helping a neighbor who's struggling, but without being able to help NGOs more, then they can't make long-lasting change.
I see. Okay. Marnie just remind me that Mas Tony asked in the chat box. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Marnie and Juan, for the great webinar today. To Marnie, I do agree that the volunteer really helps organization to improve their activity, but sometimes we're wondering how to look after or save the volunteer. Do you have any strategy to that?
Hi, Thomas. I do have a couple of things that I can suggest. And my suggestions, I suppose, come from my own experience with volunteering. That in Australia, I do volunteer with 2 different organisations. One of them is a health-related charity and the other one is an animal conservation charity. And with both of those organisations, there's particular things that they do that make me want to volunteer, make me want to continue volunteering, make me want to come back, which I think is sort of basically what you're asking in your question. So I suppose first up, the first thing that they both do that engages me as a volunteer, they have regular communication with me. I'll get regular emails from them. So one of them will email me weekly, one of them will email me every 3 or 4 weeks, but I know that I'll get that regular communication from both of them. Both of the places that I volunteer with have social media pages, which for me means connecting with them over Facebook. So they've got their social media pages, I guess, set up for volunteers, so I can go in, I can speak to the organisers, I can connect with other volunteers, I can see what sort of things are happening in their volunteer world. So it really is a community, I suppose, for me to be a part of and feel like I'm valued, I suppose, as part of that particular organisation. Through both of those channels, regular updates of what's happening. Like I know at the Animal Conservation Centre that I work at, they recently had a couple of baby animals born. So we got notified of the baby animals. We got some photos, things like that, before the public was made aware. So that sort of thing was really engaging, I think, for me, because it's like, well, wow, they're telling me before they tell anybody else. That's pretty exciting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With both of the places that I volunteer with, I know they've got a variety of ways to keep in touch with people. Like I'll get regular phone calls maybe once a month from one of the places. Hi Marnie, how are you? Is everything going well? When are you going to come and volunteer again? Or I can see you volunteered last weekend. How did you go? All that sort of stuff. So the other one would just do the email, like through the mailing list and that sort of thing. But yeah, they both have ways to actually interact. individually with people, which engages them. So one of the places that I volunteer with, one of them is event-based, so it's only a couple of times a year, but the other one encourages me to do 12 shifts with them each year, or 12 days work per year. So having that regular commitment and that regular promise that I'll come down and do 12 days of work with them, it sort of gets me to sustain my work with them, I suppose. At the end of the year, both of the places will do, certificates, and public acknowledgement for the people that have done the most shifts, the most hours, that type of thing, just to acknowledge what's happened. I get training from both of them. So they give me training courses, online training, in-person training, things like that. So it gives me a benefit to volunteer as well. So all of those sorts of things, Thomas, are things that both of those places do to engage me. And I imagine probably a lot of places in Australia that engage with volunteers probably do similar things to that. So hopefully that helps. I know it's very based on my personal experience, but hopefully it's given you some ideas, Thomas, of what ECOTON can do with its volunteers moving forward.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Marnie. So they send you an email or talk to you through phone calls, right? It's
Phone
actually
through social media.
Yeah, it's actually a new way. We never tried that before. It's actually great. Okay, I think that is all for the questions today. And I'm really, really grateful that you guys served the presentation well. And I'm really glad that you guys are able to explain it to all of us here and answer the questions really, really detailed. And I think that is enough. And I hope that all the knowledge and the insights that Juan and Marnie gave us today will enlighten us and will give a positive impact to the academic world and also the environmental organizations. And I thank all the participants and the questioners who have been very active to us today. Me personally, representing all the ECOTON's team, will want to say pardon us if there are words that are not pleasing for you guys today. Untuk kurang lebihnya, kami dari tim ECOTON mengucapkan mohon maaf dan yeah, I think that is all. Thank you guys. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May peace be upon us all. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, and greetings of virtue. Thank you guys. Thank you, Marnie and Juan, for the great presentation.
Thank you for having us, Marissa. Thank you, everyone, for coming along to listen.
Yeah. Bye-bye, guys. See you in
Thank
the next.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.